Sure. So we are people, like-minded people, and today I'm going to talk about RENs and open science and how can we have better partnership. I understand I have 30 minutes.
I
Is
don't
that
know that
okay?
we begin already.
So 25
Leona?
minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So I will be very fast just to make sure. Okay. Um, so can we exchange, go through the, um, okay.
Oh,
So
Jimmy.
this is what I'm going to do is I will introduce the open science recommendation. I will also go through the implementation strategy of UNESCO and how can we link with the RENs. And I will give you some of the ideas from the regional mapping in 5 AP regions, Asia Pacific regions, and some of the results we have for RENs on their preparedness for open science and how can we bring more content together. And then I will give some ideas about how UNESCO's work can be strengthened together with you. So in this regard, I just want first to highlight that UNESCO as United Nations is working on human rights, and human rights are enforced through culture and through science, and of course through your work on research and education networks. So what we are doing has consequences at a much higher moral as well as a scientific level for creating capacities for the sustainable development goals. An example is the World Heritage Convention, which is a convention ratified by the governments. So in this case, the Convention on World Heritage, we are, by the way, celebrating 50 years of this convention this year. So this is an agreement which becomes a convention after the state parties have ratified, and it is a legal binding instrument. So in a very similar way, the open science area has a open science recommendation, which is approved by the General Conference of UNESCO last year. I was in Paris at that moment, and this is a very important tool to improve the quality and accessibility of science. And this is very much aligned with the work what RENs are doing, bringing science, technology, innovation together. And very importantly, our member states, including from where RENs are, they have signed on it. So this is a under soft international law which can enforce capacities at the national level. The process has been very detailed. So many of you have contributed to it. So we have been working on open science partnerships and ideas since 2020, which has led to different drafts, consultative processes, inputs from our intergovernmental bodies, leading on to the vetting by the governments and by the technical committees. And that's where we have this recommendation now as approved by the UNESCO General Conference. So consultations have brought together scientists, policymakers. Also, very importantly, we have regional perspectives, which I will give about Asia Pacific. As the leader of UNESCO in Asia Pacific, I have led those consultations, so I will be able to give some of those ideas. And there is also consultation with RENs, which I will give some ideas as well. And that's where international collaboration and networking is critical. We have now the core values. We bring natural as well as social sciences, linking with citizen engagement, also linking with the universities, and very importantly, the various levels of research infrastructure at the national, regional, and the global level. So, dear colleagues, with this normative instrument, we have a document as well as a number of implementation mechanisms and working groups. And I will be very actively exploring how with the APAN, the office here in Beijing can work with you to strengthen this very important network and framework. So in open science, there is, of course, first of all, open scientific knowledge, publications, software, source code, hardware, also the scientific equipment and instruments in terms of infrastructure, in terms of scientific data, And here I would like to draw your attention to computational and digital infrastructures. So that's where I think there can be a lot of interesting areas of collaboration, also linking with society and society at various levels, including research, and especially role of universities as key knowledge providers. And also very importantly, we are bringing the local indigenous knowledge systems into the realm of science as well. Dear colleagues, these are the action areas. So the first one is developing common understanding of science, open science, what kind of policy environment we need, what kind of infrastructure and services are needed, and how do we bring the capacity building at various levels. So I suggest this is an area where we can work together and offer customized courses through RENs for capacity building. Also linking with international and multi-stakeholders all the way through innovative approaches and linking with the incentives for open science, so people share publications, the data, ideas, as well as joint learning and capacity building. Let me introduce to you the implementation strategy of open science. And in the implementation strategy, first of all, is how do we raise awareness? How do we link at the different levels, at the institutional levels, the national, regional levels, international levels with the research bodies, the science bodies, the alliances of science organizations, and I see also APAN in that category as well. And how can we create joint opportunities together, especially for monitoring implementation, and how can we have bigger impact? At the international level, our activities are to develop supporting tools, fact sheets, also mapping open science policies and strategies. So we have a number of these toolkits as well as policy instruments which we have already brought together, and we are collecting best practices. We are partnering with academies of sciences, for example, with like the Chinese Academy of Sciences, as well as with the Asian academies, as well as bodies like ASEAN, for example. And how do we continue to build training modules and training workshops with capacity building and monitoring frameworks. So here we have a steering committee at the highest level, at the Director General of UNESCO's level, for strategic guidance and oversight with members drawn from all over the world. And then we have a partnership, Global Open Science Partnership on technical advice and guidance, and then the working groups, which are at the technical level and intersectoral in terms of science, education, culture, communication. How can we bring that together? 5 working groups for your information, and the dates on which they have become effective are Open Science Capacity Building Working Group, Open Science Policies and Policy Instruments Working Group, Open Science Funding Incentives, and Open Science Infrastructure. And we also have a monitoring Open Science Framework Working Group. So you can see these working groups have become effective. At the regional level, we are also working with a similar structure. And with my presence now in Beijing, there is a much more active role of the office here in Beijing into these areas. So, dear colleagues, we have been working with science infrastructures as well, where we have brought a number of experts from around the world. And I'm sure you may know some of those experts. They have brought together their insights on where are the gaps, how can we bring a better integration and interoperability of data as well as of infrastructures, and how do we bring the equity and access, at the same time looking into how can we maintain the minimum infrastructure which may be necessary, and how can we build the capacities. So from the experts' analysis and recommendations, these are the key messages. There is a range of existing open science infrastructure, physical and virtual. So there is no uniformity about the infrastructure which is there. The funding is short-term. We need longer-term investment into global infrastructure for research and education, for better implementation. And there must be better partnerships with the governments and the private sectors and investors and funders. Interoperability of the open science infrastructures and platforms is necessary, especially for South-South and our South and triangular cooperation. Dear colleagues, we need to bring local context, and that's where maybe APAN members can help bring the local context, and we can also bring in the science organizations at the national level. Moving on to the pilot Asia Pacific region, and we have a publication on the issues related to open science. So I will also introduce Stepan, which is our science and technology network in the Asia Pacific, and the related science, engineering, technology, innovation, governance framework. This Stepan overarching framework brings together the science policy stakeholders from different countries, and they are part of the work linking UNESCO centers, UNESCO chairs, looking into how can we bring science, engineering, technology, innovation, and SDGs together, and how can we build appropriate infrastructure. It is now very active, and they are working together with UNESCO on open science implementation and looking into policy as well as about what would be the institutional culture needed. We have a program in UNESCO, which is about a science policy and understanding the metadata of science policy, GOSC. So it brings that also. For your information, Stepan members link very actively with UNESCO national commissions, and this can be one way of integration with the national research bodies. So there is a paper which we have just published. I'm one of the co-authors among the distinguished authors about open science and linking with the SDGs and what are the prospects. So let me share some prospects with you on different strategies and mechanisms, especially in the context of SDGs. We took 5 countries: Malaysia, Republic of Korea, Pakistan, Samoa, and Uzbekistan. So they are carefully selected. So one is in ASEAN, one is in Northeast Asia, South Asia, Central Asia, and the Samoa is, of course, a small island. So from each one of the countries, we have some good practices and understanding which we can share with you. So first of all, there are some common messages. One of the messages is there is a need to increase the level of awareness and understanding about what open science really is. Who are the open science champions? Also looking into policies at the national, regional level, there are challenges, and also how can we bring some generic models? There are no generic models available which can be used for open science, and there are issues of equities within and between countries. So this is a big challenge in terms of the digital divides. Also, there is a real issue with ICT capabilities, and how can we come to a common level of understanding. Top-down, bottom-up approaches for policy development need to be carefully looked into, and what kind of incentives and investment for open science, bringing scientists, infrastructure people, as well as the stakeholders who need this knowledge and data can work together. So that's where the financial incentives, as well as career pathways, as well as looking into the custodian roles, all of them are critical. Also, affordability and equity of open science infrastructure. I worked with Marcus some time ago on creating capabilities in Timor-Leste. These issues still remain. We have to carefully think how can we bring the minimum infrastructure together for the implementation of the open science. And I think this can be a game changer for the way research and education networks can contribute from different countries, bringing more investments into infrastructure as well as the content. Also looking into the local academia, and indeed these countries, they are not really aware of the international initiative, and they are not really well connected. And that's where we need to create the community of practice among different universities. And UNESCO mechanisms need to be better engaged with open science as well as with research and infrastructure. So there is a recommendation to infrastructure, and for infrastructure need to be strengthened because of the unbalance and inequities, as well as from the point of view of bringing the FAIR principle. So I'm talking to the converted, you know very well, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable principles. Research and education networks can help us connect between different countries and bring the basic minimum standards necessary. So in this regard, standardized platforms for data exchange, also for bringing machines and data traffic control, linking with open access books, journals, and various types of gray literature in a non-profit way is critical. So coming to the last part of my presentation, it's linked with RENs and what is the perception of RENs on open science and what can be their possible role. So we are thankful to SOI Asia, a long-term partner of UNESCO and APAN, for looking into how we can foster and enhance the role of RENs for the implementation of open science in this region. So in this regard, RENs can play a very important role in helping close the digital divides. And RENs role, national or non-national, RENs are key actors in supporting, and can be the key actors in supporting open science, which can help bring a better equity in terms of science as a basic human right. So in this project, we have been cooperating, as I said before, with SOI, Asia, and APAN. And these are the 4 key activities. One is a regional survey to look into the diversity of RENs, what open science means to them. Is it platform, is it data, is it mechanism? And also organizing a series of workshops with the RENs to bring the open science as a key area of understanding and multi-stakeholder dialogues which can be promoted together to bring synergies. Also very importantly, looking into the implementation of regional strategies which we can develop together through our regional workshops. So what we are trying to do to bring common understanding is a common understanding by the open science community about what is REN, and by REN, what is the open science itself. And at the regional level, where are the roles which RENs can play for implementing in the Asia Pacific region, but also looking into the content from the open science which can become more interesting and widely available. So let me share the result of the survey. Does your REN support or promote open science? So if you look into the results of the survey, it looks like most people really don't think, because maybe they don't know what open science is and what is maybe on the other hand, the understanding by the scientists of the RENs. So how can we bring the common infrastructure together and collaborative approaches? Does your country or region have dedicated institutions or entities dealing with open science? I'm very sorry to report to you that the majority answer is no, or I don't know. Not many people know. So we have to work together. So I invite APAN to be our partner in bringing such understanding about open policy and strategy. So there is a lot of gap there. Also about the relevant aspects of open science, which can be strengthened from skills development, from collaboration, from open infrastructure. hardware. I think there is a very big potential. This can be a key way for us to continue to promote science for all, leaving no one behind for the sustainable development goals. So identity of researchers, understanding who are the people who are the people, understanding the the standards, connectivity, all of them are very relevant and very important. So in general, there is a challenge about the understanding of the open science policy, understanding of the awareness, but also a big challenge for the present funding and funding mechanisms, and the lack of high bandwidth RENs available for knowledge institutions. So that's where we need to carefully look into how can we support these initiatives together. So also, what are the top 3 actions which are necessary? So very importantly, the role of RENs into open science at the national level. And that's something we need to work together. Also, how can we bring regular funding mechanisms and how we promote the joint initiatives, how to explain to the policymakers that they are aware, they agree, and they're ready to take action. So infrastructure support, backbone network support, scientific infrastructure and services leading to better collaborative environments, leading to support for implementation of open science as a key initiative. These are the areas where we can work together. The capacity building is needed at various levels. Policy people, researchers, RENs themselves, also looking into the coordination and effective interaction mechanisms. Lastly, what is next? So we will be working on the regional workshops, looking into the policies, sharing practices, and also looking into training and capacity building. So I invite all APAN members to work with us. Open Engineering is one such initiative where we are working with WCCE, and we can bring ICT and culture, education, science, bringing intersectoral possibilities. With that, dear Verachai, I hopefully live to the promise to contain everything within the 3 minutes. I'm happy if there is any question I can
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. You are very informative information, but shocking that people don't know much about this open science. You have 2 questions from the audience. Muhammad Taurif, I don't know where you come from, but he would like to know that when did you do the survey? This survey that
The survey is we did surveys before November last year, the Asia Pacific Regional Consultations, when I was regional director of UNESCO, and with the RENs, these surveys are more recent. So not too old. These surveys are in, let's say, in last 12 to 18 months. So this is very up-to-date data, and this is where the present situation is.
Okay, so and it shows that we have a lot of work to do.
Sure.
Yeah, from Malaysia, Suhaimi Nafis. Can I have the PowerPoint that you're presenting?
Whatever I ever present is open for everybody, because we say open science.
Right.
So my open presentation, you're welcome to use, misuse, plagiarize in any way you like. So the presentation will be available. It has been sent to colleagues in APAN. And if anybody cannot access it, if you want to know, my email is s.khan@unesco.org. Many colleagues follow me on Facebook or Twitter. I will be happy to send you.
Okay, it will be posted in APAN 54 website, I believe.
By all means, post it, and I don't claim any credit for the research on that. It is the collective work of people like you around the world. So that's why it must be open. And we see this as a big opportunity for us to share such kind of data and information, and we do more on the regional workshops.
Okay. Yeah, that's why we are, as APAN, we are having the open and sharing working group And then we know that this is the very big issue that we have to go over and then try to solve it. But it's gonna take long time. Then we'll see how can we do it. So by the end of this APAN 54 on Friday, we will release the version 1 of the data.apan.net, which all the APAN community, we would love to get the contribution from you to try to open as much as possible. And UNESCO already joined us in this working group. Okay. Any further question? Let me check. No further question. Any last words?
Thank you very much. We are really looking forward to work with APAN.
Okay.
In my capacity as the regional director before in Jakarta, the events we organized on disaster risk management, for example, in Indonesia, and the various activities we have done before with SWI Asia, bringing one day in Asia. Open science is a key game changer. This can help us bring the content and the source of cooperation among higher institutions. Also, UNESCO centers, that's a very big resource, and UNESCO chairs. We have more than 800 UNESCO chairs in the world, and many of them are in our region. So I strongly welcome any partnerships from colleagues who are listening to us. And I'm looking forward to the recommendation of your open data group and how it evolves. Don't think I'm gone. I am here in the region working with you. So nice to see you, dear Dr.
Yes. So nice to see you again. And then we will get your work and our work together, and then we will try to make it happen as soon as possible. But I think it's gonna take a long time.
No problem. So I will be watching the next presentations in the background. I have another presentation very soon. So if I disappear, please.
There's excuse me. There's one more question. University ranking have not yet incorporated open science. Any suggestion of how they could be motivated to promote and adopt open science?
Yeah, this is a key area which UNESCO is carefully working, including with the publishing houses as well. And with the higher learning institutions. That's why the working groups have introduced and the highest level of coordination at the level of the governments. Whether world likes it or not, world has to open with the open science, and the credit which is from open data, sharing of ideas, sharing of publications. This will become more and more reflected in, first of all, in the ranking of the individuals themselves as a researcher, like on ResearchGate and others you do, but also in the ranking of the universities themselves. Many countries, without naming them, I can tell you, they're moving away from international ranking and they are coming up with the new systems. So let's wait for it. This is now the momentum is building up.
Yeah, good sign. And then, okay, thank you very much. It's time to move to the next speaker. Okay, Professor Jianhui Li is the wait, let me check. Sorry. He's the director of CSTCloud Department, Computer Network Information Center, Vice President of the Committee of Data of the International Science Council. His research mainly focuses on cloud computing and distributed systems in open science paradigms. Currently, he's leading the Advanced National Research E-Infrastructure, which is called China Science and Technology Cloud. The current version is 2.0, and they have a lot of resources. And then he will be talking about talking about the open science infrastructure of a global innovation, the CSTCloud practice. Please, Professor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So it's my pleasure to share our some experience on the open science infrastructures. Just I think can actually present also give some open science concepts and the progress in the world, I will just focus on our infrastructure in CAS, in CSTCloud. So actually, we all know now we face many global challenges. All these global challenges call for open science or open collaboration around the world. And maybe 10 years ago, I was first involved in the science as an open enterprise. This is maybe a report published by the Royal Society of Science. And after 10 years, so just as Han mentioned last year, so UNESCO published the open science recommendation. So as we know, open science infrastructure is one of the key pillars for open science. And there are many practices in national, regional organization practice. For example, the Europeans is developing the European Open Science Cloud. And in China, we are trying to design and develop a platform we call the China Science and Technology Cloud from 2017. So actually, the CSTCloud is evolving from CAS research e-infrastructures. It's including the research network we call the China Science and Technology Network. This is a high-speed network linked to all the branch CAS organizations and even linked to the world. And the second one is the computing facilities. We built some supercomputing grid environment to support the science research. And third one is research data. And in China, China established 20 national scientific data centers, and there are 13 data centers located in CAS. So based on all this digital infrastructure and even the research infrastructure, we try to build a national research infrastructure we call the to support the data-driven science and even open science. So for the mission of this infrastructure, we wish we can define open architecture to dynamically converge the data, computational infrastructure, and all the other research resources. And we wish we can co-design integrated service model for science discovery. So always the service and the service can be integrated to offer to all the scientists. And we wish we can explore a win-win mechanism for sustainable operation and services. This platform should be sustainable, should have a win-win mechanism to make more resource and service provider involved in this platform, and also more scientists can find the services they needed from this platform. So we based several principles. First is this should be open architecture and for open science, and it might be federation. It not be centralized. It may be or decentralized. We use a federation style to federation different resources and services, and it should some standardization, follow some specifications, and make it interoperability with the other platform. And we should have sustainable mechanisms to make it sustainable services, and it's service oriented. So all the users can just find the service, use the service. And for all the scientists, it's just unified access. There's a single sign-on and the unified access all the resources, even the service or the resource provided by different providers. But for users, they can use it unified to use it. So this is a short history from we started this work from 2016, and it's almost maybe over 5 years. And now it's one of the key national e-infrastructures. So we will fully support the multidisciplinary open scientific researches with integrated cloud services for discovery, usage, and delivery. It's including some, the data, the research data, and the information, the journal, the open journal. And so the algorithm and the data process algorithm and the tools. And we also provide the some of the infrastructure, the high-speed network, the computing facility, and the massive data storages. And we also have a pool of research software. So the software providers, also maybe the users, they will share their software in the platform and share the algorithm, the data. They can do their research online and do cooperation in this platform. So our target users, so we were three types. One is the scientists, researchers. They can find the services, they can use it. And the second one is the service providers. So if you have a software, you can, publish in this platform as the services. And also the other one is the resource owners. So if you have some other resources, for example, the computing resources or the network resources, you can, as a service provider, and all the CSTCloud the users. So we integrate and federated all these resources and services and provide a unifying services for our scientists. And so we provide the infrastructure as service and the platform as service and some software services, these three layers, to support our discipline science researches. So this is our service capacities, so the computing capacity and the storage and the network, and you can find over petabytes sharing open data, and even 1,000 research software. You can use it, or even you can download it. So this is some typical use cases. So the FAST is a big science research environment facilities, and some space science or even the earth science, they can best this platform to have a research environment for their project and the research. So we wish our cloud environment can be linked to the world. So we wish the CSTCloud can make interoperability with all the other platforms. So we initiate a new platform we call the Global Open Science Cloud. This is a cross-continental federated infrastructure and virtual research environment for global collaboration and open science. So, and this initiative is not just to make a new wheel, it's just, link all the platforms to connect various institutional, national, or regional initiatives, and narrowing the foundation for cross-continental federated open science and fair infrastructures and the virtual research environment. So we wish and we will have a deliverable platforms to establish a robust network of trust research infrastructure to connect research resources and all stakeholders to enable initiative science discovery in the dynamic evolving global open science environment. So this is a very high level framework. We think there are maybe 5 layers. So I think the fundamental layer is the global research and education network. This is key to to make the infrastructure link together and to support the global cooperation. And beyond that, we wish we call the cloud federation, the computing, storage, and any analysis so resources can, can interoperability, can provide the cloud services for all the users, and the data is a key issue. So the global open data fabric will offer optical solutions to data management and will increase the generate values from the big data analytics. And beside it, which maybe the other social community is a key issue for based on all these services. And last but not least, so we need to have a transparent collaboration of teleservice as a virtual research environment or domain-specific problem-solving environment. That is very key issue. This is actually the user can use it, can best this environment to do their research. So CAS, Chinese Academy of Science, give or seek money to to do some tests to start these initiatives. So and the CoData is organized, is kept to make this project as a global initiatives to support the cooperation, alignment, and the co-design. And so we jointly support this these works. And now we have 3 groups to build these initiatives. So we established the steering groups to to guide these initiatives, and we have established 4 thematic working groups and several case studies. We think this is not a technique-driven initiative. It should be science-driven or application-driven. So we have to identify some specific or typical science cooperation, the global cooperation, the requirement, and find the gaps. And so we can try to find the solutions and do social case. So we will share the knowledge, the guidelines. And then we will find more partners to try to test whether we can try to link our open science platform together, and just like our internet to as a whole to offer service to our scientists, our global corporations. So this is the working groups and the case study groups. One is focused on the strategy, governance, and the sustainability. This working groups really is try to to identify the barriers of the policy barriers for cooperation, the platform cooperation. And the second one is the policy and the legal issues. They will identify the policy and the legal barriers, and how to share the data, how to cross continental sharing data. This is actually, it's a very difficult now. And the third one is technical infrastructures. We will try to find the the technical solutions to make the platform interoperability. And the fourth is data interoperability. Data is a key issue, so we'll find how to make data fair, and the different data service can be interoperability, can be integration can be reusable and open to all the scientists. And we also selected 5 case studies. One is focused on the concurrent scatter radar data fusion and computation. So there are one radar data facility in European, and the other one is maybe in China. They will try to, based on this GOSC platform, to have data cooperation and to do federation data process, and even to do some the cooperation on some researches. The second one is biodiversity and ecology. The third one is focused on the SDG 13, climate change and natural disasters. This is really focused on the East Asian areas. So the first one is sensitive data federation analysis model in population health. And the last one, but not is focused on the open reproducible raw differentiation data for access in pandemics. So you can see all the use cases is focused on the science domain, and they should need to share the data, the computation. They will do to data federation analysis, and even share some model and so on. So by now, we in technical level, we just build one we call a technical testbed. This cloud federation testbed. So CSTCloud and the EGI to make a testbed now. So EGI's users can access CSTCloud, the resources and services. And our users can also access their resources and services. So this is it's actually focused on the infrastructure level. So we can the OpenStack cluster, and we connect our AI system with the EGI check-in system. So make the users can unify access the resources. And this is our CSTCloud Federation pilot systems. So this will we federated different cloud resources from different institutions, and they try to offer a unified resource. User can use the cloud resource via this this platform. And this is the case I will skip it. And this is our timeline. We initiated this GOSC initiative in 2019 after 2 years of preparation, and organize a series meetings and find the partners. So we tried to do some concrete cooperation in this year, use case, test, and some recommendations. We wish in the next 2 years we can have maybe a cross-continent test bed to show how to make this platform interoperability, how to support the global cooperation. And then we wish we can share some guidelines, some knowledge to all the partners, and try to push the open science infrastructure can be integrated, or even can be alignment, and to provide a service just as the internet now. So we call for international partners. So we all think coming together is a beginning, keeping together is a progress. So working together is successful. I wish we can work together with the APAN partners to push our GOSC initiative, or even the open science forward. So thank you all the partnerships, the GOSC initiatives. So if you have interest to join our working group and the case studies, you can access this website. This is CoData, and you can sign and then join our discussion and share your knowledge and make some contributions. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Jianhui Li. Very informative talk and fantastic talk. Even the last slide say that welcome to the all partner. Still, there's one question here from the audience. That's can researchers from the education gain member institution now be able to carry out testing or accessing the cloud infrastructure test base of yours?
Yes, next maybe from September 6th we will have a training workshop. We will offer some our test bed to the to our users. After that, we will open our websites, the GOSC test beds, and we offer some resources, and so all the users can use it. please care about our websites. Okay, is www.csTCloud.net. So we will publish some information there. Okay.
Okay, and then have to be wait a bit then.
Yeah, thank you.
And then the CSTCloud infrastructure already is able to accept SAML login from CARSI Federation.
Yes, we accept CMN login, but we accept OIDC symbol and several protocols. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No. One more question. Only a few NREN are involved. How can the involvement of NREN may be increasing? Is there any plan to make it happen?
Actually, in the test bed, we cooperate with, we are also the research network operating service providers, the CSTCloud, actually including the CSTNet. So our CSTNet have a cooperation with the GOSC. So we wish in the Asian area, if it's possible, we welcome all the cooperation in this area. As you know, if we want to federate the cloud or computing facility or even big data, so the network is a key issues to make it possible. Yeah, welcome.
Okay, then no more question. Thank you very much, Professor. We move on to the next speaker, and she is a Professor Virginia Barber. You can call her Ginny. She's the co-leader of the co-lead Office of the Scholar Communication, Queensland University of Technology, and Director of Open Access Australia. She trained in UK in medical. Okay, and then she will give a talk on the need for a diverse open research ecosystem. Probably this is kind of a way that we try to make it happen. Please, Jeannie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. So yes, my name's Jianhui Barber. I'm the Director of Open Access Australasia and also the co-lead for the Office for Scholarly Communication at QUT. So I'm based in Brisbane on the beautiful east coast of Australia. And as is traditional, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I live and work on, which is the Turrbal and Yurra people in southeast Queensland, and to pay my respects to Indigenous people who may be here today and to any of their elders who are past or present. So I just wanted to talk, about diversity in scholarly communication, particularly as we move towards an open research ecosystem. And I'm just really mindful of some of the things that I'm going to talk about. We'll touch on what's been talked about already by the previous speakers, and especially by Shahbaz Khan. You might be pleased to know that we are doing some work towards an open science in Australia. So when I was writing this talk, it occurred to me that one of the fantastic examples of what a diverse ecosystem is the fantastic barrier reef, which is just on our doorstep. It's in some trouble now because of climate change, but one of its strengths is undoubtedly the fact that it is incredibly diverse. And this fantastic picture here comes from the Biodiversity Heritage Library, which is a public domain resource, and it just shows, I think, what's some of the fantastic corals associated with the barrier reef. And I just hold that in mind as we go through the rest of the presentation. Okay. Okay, so just a quick thing about who we are and what we do. So we are Open Access Australasia. So we have members from across Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. We are primarily university-based, so we have 28 universities, but we also include a diverse range of groups, including Creative Commons Australia, and most recently, the Australian Citizen Science Association has joined us. So we really do try and embrace the full diversity of open science partners and open access groups across the region. We have a number of key principles, and the ones that I think I'd like to highlight here are, one is around equity and scholarly communication. And we believe that one of the ways that we support that is through having a diverse ecosystem of open access approaches. And that's why much of the work that we do focuses on this concept of diversity. Most of what I'm going to talk about today is based on a paper that I wrote for a newsletter in Australia last month, which was picked up by the Soapbox at Coalition S, and you can read there what I talked about. There I was particularly talking about the role of repositories in the research ecosystem and kind of how important they are as we move towards, kind of an increasing move, I would say, to think of publishers wanting to consolidate how we move to open access. So this was just lays out some of the arguments that we've discussed as a group. So I'm going to talk a bit about open access and open research initiatives in Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand, because I think they're a really nice example of what's been happening globally, but also gives a sort of a taster of some of the things that have happened in our region, which I think quite a lot of people here may not be familiar with. And they're rather huge slides, so just bear with me as I walk you through them. So this is a poster that we did last year for the OA 2020 conference. It's up on our website, and you're very welcome to use it and to disseminate it. What you can see here is that we've been talking about open access for more than 20 years in Australia, and it starts right back here in 2000 when the Australian National University launched its open access repository. If you fast forward to 2008, there was an Australian National Data Service established, and that turned into the Australian Research Data Commons up in 2018. There's a whole piece of work that's been done by the Australian University Librarians, the Council of Australian University Librarians, when they developed a policy, and the government itself, or rather the two major funders in Australia, the National Health and Medical Research Council and the Australian Research Council themselves, developed open access policies back in 2013. What I want to just highlight here really is that when you're moving towards some sort of an open research or open access ecosystem, there's a lot of players involved. I mean, I think that came across really nicely in the previous two talks as well. And what we've done here is try to map out who's involved. So are they government, funder, institutional, peak advocacy bodies? And Shahbaz Khan might be very pleased to know that actually we have we've just put in place an open science network, and in fact we'll be having the first meeting of that tomorrow. So I was really delighted to see many of the slides that he's come up with. We have been involved in some of the great work that UNESCO is doing with regards to the implementation of the open science recommendation, but we're now trying to coordinate groups across Australia to work on that. What we have finally seen, and you can see right up at the top right here, is that the Australian Chief Scientist has now taken an interest in open access. And one of the things that we identified when we started working on open access in Australia in particular was the real need to have government, high-level government buy-in. And our current Chief Scientist, Dr. Cathy Foley, has indicated that she is interested in open access in Australia. So a similar arrow for Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's slightly fewer data points on it, partly because it's a smaller country, but also really just to note again that back in 2000 there were networks and technologies being developed which have been used to support open research and open science. If you fast forward to 2019, CONSOL, which is the Council of New Zealand University Librarians, came up with a statement on open scholarship, but that's quite important because it specifically recognises the need to include Maori perspectives, which is very important in the New Zealand context. It also includes here, as for Australia, the open negotiation of read and publish agreements that are now being used across the universities in both countries. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about what diversity means in the context of a publishing ecosystem. So some of you may be familiar with the term bibliodiversity. This has been around for 2 or 3 years, but it was really solidified back in 2019 when Kathleen Shearer and colleagues wrote a paper sponsored by the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, which talked about why bibliodiversity was so important. And one of the things that was really great to see was actually this term actually is specifically in the UNESCO Open Science recommendation. So this is from the paper that Kathleen and colleagues wrote, and they talk about that diversity being an important characteristic of any healthy ecosystem. As you know, as for the barrier reef, the same is true for scholarly communications. And that diversity extends not just to services and platforms, it also extends to funding mechanisms. And I think that's one of the challenges that we are beginning to see at the moment, is that funding mechanisms somewhat are shrinking as we think about some parts of the open research ecosystem. But it's very important there is a diversity of models. It's important that we also why it matters is because it then can encompass things such as the different workflows, particularly different languages. That's a very important issue once you move outside of the English-speaking scholarly communication system. And it can also support different types of research outputs. One of the things that I work on at QUT is we're thinking very hard about the types of non-traditional research outputs and how those fit into the open research ecosystem. And then in particular, one of the things I'm very interested in is this concept of diversity reduces the idea that we get locked into just specific vendors for particular initiatives. And that is very important if we want in the future to make sure the system is both diverse, but also is sustainable, and that we don't end up with excessively high prices. So, because one of the things that we know is that consolidation in publishing is both not new, but it's also it's increasing. So this was a really important paper that was published in 2015 by Vincent Lariviere and colleagues. And what it showed is, if you look at the papers going, publishers going from 1970 up to 2015, there's a quite alarming increase in consolidation, such that 5 major publishers really dominate the market. And in some areas, as you can see for chemistry, it's over 70%, and that I think is pretty alarming. And this consolidation is increasing, and we know that although it may differ slightly by each specialty, which are the particular publishers that dominate, they do remain a very small number of publishers that dominate. And if this is continuing. So the trigger for the paper that I wrote earlier this month was a piece of an opinion piece that was written by Stephen Inchcombe, who's the Chief Publishing Officer at Springer Nature, in July 2022. And he was basically pushing back against the concept that repositories have any place in the open ecosystem. And these are just a couple of quotes that I pulled from this, which is that funders' promotion of zero embargo green open access works against a true transition, and was calling against funders to actually stop supporting green open access repositories. And that also that green, i.e. repository-based open access, doesn't offer the benefits of higher citations. And we know this isn't true for some of these statements. And so the paper that I put forward was to push back against some of this and to open up the debate more widely. Because first of all, we do know that diverse approaches maximize citations and downloads. So I've just grabbed a couple of examples here. So the one on the left, this is from a paper published by Heather Pivovar and colleagues, which looked at is a great paper actually that was published in PeerJ itself, an open access journal, that looked at the relative citations of all the different types of open access. So closed is obviously subscription, gold is journal-based, green is repository-based, hybrid is where there's a subscription, individual article is made open in an otherwise subscription journal, and bronze is this rather unfortunate category where things are made open but without a license, so they may not be open in perpetuity. And what you can see is, if you look at all of this, that the repository base comes out the highest, and open access has a benefit across the board. And just in case you think that open repositories don't get downloaded, this is just, I've just grabbed this from the repository statistics at Queensland University of Technology, and this shows an enormous amount of downloads over the past since it was launched in 2005, and it's already seeing more than 1 million downloads this year. So it's a highly used and very well accessed resource, the vast majority of which is from outside of QUT, and a large proportion of which is outside of academia. So it's an important source of information and dissemination of research outside of the academic sphere. Okay, and of course, one of the things we really do know is that in the pandemic, this became even more important because the current systems for publishing research simply could not cope with the enormous volume of papers that were published during the pandemic. This looks right at the beginning. So this is back in right at the beginning of pandemic in 2020. You can see how the number of publications on COVID-19 began to take off. This was the pandemic was called around in early March. And by April, May, the number of papers were accelerating dramatically. There were a huge number of journal articles and a very diverse number of publications. But what was really interesting is if you look here, the number of publications that were happening is preprints. And the slide, if you look just down below, what you can see is that these preprints are not even a kind of single unit. So the large proportion of them was published in preprint in medRxiv, which is this pink band at the top, but there were many, many other places where preprints ended up. So this is a great example of how diversity became really important at a time of, an international crisis. And the other thing that we see is that, just in case people worry that preprints, again, perhaps support or reduce dissemination, this is a paper from 2019. So this is actually before the pandemic. But what it shows, if you look at the green versus the red bars, is you can see that essentially releasing a preprint gets both more attention. So this is on the left-hand side. So the green is the one with a preprint and the red is the one without a preprint. And the same is true for citations. Overall, increased number of citations for papers that were released as a preprint versus ones that were not. And that is citations to the final published article. So other things that a diverse ecosystem supports. Well, first off is rights retention. So we know that there's a concern about a publisher lock-in. And one of the ways that we can push back against that is by supporting the rights retention for researchers. So the Wellcome has as its grant conditions that they require their researchers to make their research open access. This can be done through the final version of record, but crucially, it can also be done through the author accepted manuscript. And that can only, again, we can only have that rights retention enshrined if there is an opportunity or a place for researchers to put their author accepted manuscript, if there isn't an option to make the version of record open. So this is a really key part of supporting a key reason why we need a diverse place to publish. And the same thing is that we also know that if you increase the number of options, what you can do is ensure that the journals that are part of the ecosystem can be competitive. And I think there's a really interesting piece of work, again, that coalitionists are doing, which is on cost containment. And what they're doing here is they are actually trying to provide a service that ensures that libraries can understand what they're getting for their money when they pay for publishing costs. Now, it's been very carefully designed so that it means that you can't have sort of cartels forming and you can't have publishers changing their prices based on what other publishers are doing. But it does indicate that, with a system that is properly diverse, that's properly managed, you can actually have some degree of cost containment. And just coming back to the UNESCO Open Science recommendation that we heard about in the first talk, it's absolutely clear that diversity is at the heart of the open science recommendation that UNESCO has taken forward. This is a text taken directly from that. And here is the part which says that it's very important that it specifically wants to encourage bibliodiversity through the diversity of formats, publications, business models, so that a whole area of a number of different models can thrive dependent on need of the individual areas of research or by specific country needs. So I think that having that written into the UNESCO Open Science recommendation itself has been particularly important. So what's next in this kind of space? Well, I'll just highlight a couple of things. I think that first off, that we know that right now the system of peer review that supports publication is generally quite traditional. But in fact, a very interesting statement again that came out from Coalition S recently talks about how if we rethink peer review, we can support diversity. So this was a statement that Coalition S released about a couple of months ago, which talks about that peer-reviewed publications are not just the peer-reviewed publications in journals, but they're also peer-reviewed publications that are layered on repositories or other equivalent platforms. And this again, I think, is an example of where leadership from an organization can really help drive forward the concept of both diversity, but also the concept of openness more generally. And it has very much been welcomed by groups that are working in this space. I'll just highlight here a piece of work that we've done at Open Access Australasia. We're trying to, again, talk about the need for diversity of investment here. We absolutely understand the need to transform traditional journals from subscription to open access, but we also want to see diversity in a range of other places. So, for example, supporting infrastructure, supporting repositories, and in particular, one of the things I would just highlight here is the need to both support innovation in scholarly communication, so experimentation, and to support locally relevant journals. And in Australia, that's particularly important in the context of, say, supporting Indigenous research. So I'll finish with a couple of things. I just want to highlight that I think we need to be a bit concerned about and to think about. It's not just the journals that are consolidating, it is infrastructure that's also consolidating. I've just put up here one tweet from in the Invest in Open Infrastructure group, where they talk about how the copyright clearance has acquired Ringgold. What does this mean? Well, what this means is if we see increased consolidation in the infrastructure areas, there's a real concern about whether or not universities are going to have and other bodies are going to have a true choice when they want to choose their next infrastructure for whatever it is. And so I think that I'm really keen to make sure that when we think about consolidation, we're not just thinking about the journals, we're thinking about the infrastructure space more widely and making the case for investment in emerging models so we can actually try and push back against this increasing consolidation. And the other thing, I guess, just to highlight that is becoming more interesting, I think, is that one of the reasons we do need to be particularly concerned about consolidation, either of infrastructure or of journals, is that we know that, as with many things, the most important thing in often these whole initiatives is the data that is being collected on behalf of these companies. And there's a piece of work that Spark is doing. They're working with an academic in this space. And essentially it's just worth noting that a lot of the data that is being collected is not necessarily just going to improve publishing services, but it actually gets sold on. And in the US, there's been some evidence it's being sold on to law enforcement agencies. And that, I think, is something that's something as a community we just need to be thinking very carefully about. So I'll stop there, and I'm very happy to take any questions and would love to hear anybody's thoughts on some of the topics that I've raised. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Virginia Barber, or Ginny, for your wonderful talk. And there's one question from the audience. Are journals independent peer-reviewed journal articles being widely accepted by top management of Australian university compared to normal peer-reviewed journal articles by publishers?
Yeah, I think we're still at a very, very early stage for that to happen. I think the statements that I talked about from Coalition S that raised that, I think was probably the first time that quite a few funders and institutions in Australia had even globally had actually really thought about it. There are some interesting experimental models that are happening that are not directly, that there's sort of somewhat related to that. So, for example, things like SciPost, some of these overlay journals. The challenge is getting them into, we talked a bit about this earlier, about the ranking systems of institutions. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think the fact that they've been raised and considered as options means that, hopefully when the next time round that people are thinking about what journals are acceptable, they will be included.
Okay. Well, no question further from the audience. My question now, talking about the indigenous knowledge, how do you put into the open science? Because some accepted, some not. You know, how can we bring up this indigenous knowledge more to the people? I think it's kind of important to be part of it, part of this open science.
Yeah. Well, look, first of all, I would just say I'm absolutely not an expert in this area, and you know, it's something that we are aware of, but we are kind of we absolutely coordinate with colleagues in this space. There's a few things going on. One of the ones that we know, for example, is that just with regard to journals that publish Indigenous research, they often aren't considered very highly at, you know, the highest levels. So they can be really challenging for researchers who work in this space, who want to be included in you know, for their research and assessment and journal and university ranking. So there's one issue there. So having a way of assessing these journals that actually is appropriate is really important. There are challenges with making some of the research open, and so there's a really good piece of work that is being done on Indigenous data governance, and that's the as well as the FAIR principles, which we heard about earlier. There's this concept of the CARE principles, and I think that one of the things that we would really like to see happen is for those to be included in any discussion that happens on publication of Indigenous research. So I think a lot of it is making it very prominent, but also working with the people who are experts in this area, you know, Indigenous researchers themselves.
Okay, yeah, just my personal feeling that the indigenous knowledge could help us a lot, because they survive for a long time. We just, you know, the new technology just came in. So if we integrate them into our, you know, current knowledge in science, that would be great. Like, I don't know, for example, in Australia, about how the Aboriginal people live a long time without no problem, and now, you know, a lot of fires, flooding, whatever. So yeah, that would be one way to help us a bit fighting with this climate change.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a fantastic example. The fire management in particular is one that, you know, that absolutely that kind of knowledge needs to not be lost. And in fact, and it's really good to see that the UNESCO Open Science recommendation has specific recommendations around working with Indigenous knowledge, and that's something that we are very keen to pursue.
Okay, great. Because if not, it will disappear, and then we cannot get it back. You know, it's just like disappear, because they I think they're telling within their tribe or something, not like really documented, so it might disappear. Okay. Okay, no more questions for you. I think then okay, thank you very much for your wonderful talk, Ginny, and then Professor Jianhui Li, and then Sebastian Khan, that providing us with the update, up to date, what going. Oh, there's so many questions more. Oh, okay, wait, sorry. Okay, how would you envisage the future to report on impact for non-traditional publication output?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and it's one of the ones where, for example, clearly, you know, publication in a journal is not going to reflect the importance of it. So a whole body of work is happening, not just in Australia but also globally. But there is a piece of work in Australia, in particular in relation to there's a program called the Excellence in Research Australia, which is how universities are assessed. Which basically peer reviews them, but doesn't assess whether they were published in a journal or not. And what absolutely happens is that each individual specialty comes up with its own measures of quality. So it may well be, for example, in relation to, you know, poetry or into a performance, you know, that it has some specified criteria against it that make it high quality compared to, you know, a sort of lower quality. So I think it has to be done specialty by specialty, and it has to be done in a way that's sensitive to, you know, what are the local standards.
Okay. Okay. Any further questions? We still have time. Any further questions from the audience? Okay, no. Then thank you very much for all three wonderful speakers. It's an honor. It's very honor for us to have you giving us information regarding this open science and open data. Okay, for that is thank you very much for your attention. Oh, okay. Wait. One more question. Oh, already. One more question. Any suggestion on how to motivate university to embrace open science? Yeah. Please, Ginny.
Shall I state that? Yeah. So I think it's related to research quality. So there's no question that open research improves the quality of research. So it's tied into reproducibility. It's tied into research integrity. So I think that the way and this, I think this is beginning to happen. Universities understand that universities want to do good research. They want to have that research well disseminated. And so I think in tying that into those initiatives is the way to go. The key, of course, though, is to incentivize researchers to do that. And so for that, they have to be recognized. So one of the things that, I think I would really like to see is, open data sharing and open code sharing being something that can be recognized as a research output, and researchers given the same credit for that as they would get in a traditional research publication. So I think that's the key to putting it all together. I wrote a piece for the Dora blog with Anna Hatch and Stephen Currick about a couple of years ago, where we talked about the intersection between research assessment and open science, and also and diversity, and they're all intertwined. They're all absolutely intertwined in a way that I think is which kind of moves us towards a system where we also have better equity within research. So I think that's the key for me.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any last question from the audience? We still have time. Anything? Any?
Just say you're very welcome to contact me on Twitter, or I'm pretty easy to find in other ways as well.
Okay, maybe you can provide that already. Is it in the slide or not? Maybe you can provide that in Hoover in the message, something like that. So one more question. See, okay, wait. Funder. Wait. Okay. Funders could be more interested in translation than open science. Maybe a comment on it?
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think they're related. As I was trying to show, if we know that open, just making research open means it's more read, it's more cited, which, and if citations are a kind of proxy for translation, we know that happens. Funders are absolutely interested in this space. I think that, what we're increasingly seeing is an expectation that, research doesn't, you don't just consider the research that you publish as being the final output. It is what happens to it afterward. And we know that, making research open means it's more likely to be picked up. In particular, we know, for example, that industries, as particularly small and medium-sized industries, do not have access to the publications that you do at a university, for example. And so they're much more likely to read something if it's made fully open.
See, the question keep coming now. Is that open access for the resources such as computation and storage for researcher from other country? Is it like maybe it's mean that in Australia other country can access yours or not?
No, I'm primarily talking about open access to research publications, but I think that the previous speaker really talked about this concept of open infrastructure. I think this is more about open infrastructure, and that is something that needs to be done on both a national and international level.
Okay. Any further? Sorry about Suki. Well. Okay. No more. All right, then Okay, thank you very much, Jinan. You are very wonderful. Thank you very much.
Welcome, great questions. Thank you everyone for
Thank
posing
you.
them.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time, next plenary.